The League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization, encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The goal of the League of Women Voters of the United States is to empower citizens to shape better communities worldwide.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's town hall sponsored by the League of Women Voters of the Midland Area, and also we want to thank MCTV for their production of this town hall tonight as well. My name is Kim Steinke and I'm the current president of the League of Women Voters of the Midland Area, and our town hall tonight will be on the new voting rights of Michigan citizens. Most of that is the result of the passage of Prop 3. Our speaker tonight is Manary, and she will be giving the presentation. And I want to introduce Ann. She's currently serving as the Midland County Clerk, and as such is the Chief Election Officer for Midland County. Ann started her career in January of 1990 in the County Clerk's office, and was elected to the office of Midland County Clerk in November of 2008. Ann is a lifelong resident of Midland, graduating from Dow High in 1987. Along with her husband, Ann, they've raised 3 children here in the Midland area, and she is a member of the Midland Business Alliance, Midland Exchange Club, League of Women Voters, and the Michigan Association of County Clerks. In April of 2008, Ann received her Master Certified County Officer Award from the United County Officers Association. And with that, Ann, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I do apologize. I do have a bit of a cold, so if I start coughing, I'm very sorry. I am going to go over some information, and I would like you to hold your questions to the end if at all possible. We will have someone coming around with a microphone, so please remember your questions, and we'll get them answered at the end. So this presentation is on Michigan's new voting rights, and it's brought to you by the League of Women Voters and from a grant from the League of Women Voters United States Education Fund. Did everyone get your little handout there? That is a new updated version, including the Michigan League of Women Voters and ACLU. We have clear and consistent language that we use to describe Michigan voting rights. There are electronic copies that are now available. So if you're looking for information, you can go to the League's website, and that information has been updated. Also, you should know Michigan's presidential primary is coming right up March 10th. Your absentee ballots are now available from your city and or township clerk. So if you're looking to get an absentee ballot, which we're going to be talking a lot about here in a little bit, you can contact one of those people and they will be glad to assist you. So 2018 was a big year for voting rights in Michigan. It was huge, lots and lots of changes. They changed the national landscape for voting rights by advocating a bold and a proactive voting right agenda. The task as organizations who share the goal of democracy, which every vote is heard, is to inform all Michigan communities about the changes and how you can participate in making the shared dream a reality. We're trying to make democracy work. So our task is an important one. To make all of our communities aware of the wonderful changes to our voting rights. And once we share this information, our additional task is to work with the communities most apt to be affected by the changes and least likely to know about them. All Michigan communities, low voting turnout districts, young people who are not in college, people of color, Native American tribes, Latinos, people with physical, mental challenges, citizens, immigrants, in other words, all of us. We want all communities to be aware that it's important that they make their voices heard. So let's start with a slide showing Michigan in 2017. The colors in this case are not reflecting political parties, but voting rights. Although Michigan had been a national leader in voting in elections decades earlier, by 2017, Michigan citizens had one of the most restrictive voting regimens in the country. These maps show how far Michigan had fallen behind the rest of the country. Most of the country allowed citizens to vote early. See all the blue states? All those were allowed to vote early, okay? Most of the states gave citizens more time to register to vote. All the red states gave extra time for people to register to vote. Here in Michigan, you had to be registered at least 30 days prior to an election in order to be able to vote on election day. That was a huge hindrance. People move, all kinds of things can happen. So Michigan, we couldn't do either. We couldn't vote early, and we couldn't register to vote in a short time span. So after years of trying to move the common sense nonpartisan reforms through the Michigan legislature with no success, citizens across the state collected the necessary signatures to promote the voting rights proposal on the November ballot as Proposal 3 of 2018. And Proposal 3 won by more votes than any candidate on the ballot. Most significantly, it won in 80 of Michigan's 83 counties. It's huge. That's a resounding victory and shows how broad the support was and among the public for free and fair access to the ballot. Proposal 3 wasn't just about changing the rules to ensure full and fair access to the ballot, although it did do that. Proposal 3 was also about ensuing the possibility of full participation in our democracy. And to ensure the full participation of all eligible citizens, we needed more than rule changes. We needed robust public education campaign about voting rights so eligible citizens can make their voices heard. This presentation is part of that educational campaign. Being an empowered voter is about empowering others, so make sure you take all this information that we're going to give you tonight back to all your friends, family, relatives, all that good stuff. Let them know the things that you learned here today. We don't just want to update you on Proposal 3, especially about the two biggest changes to voting in Michigan. We want you to feel empowered to educate others in your community about your voting rights. Spread the word. Many people didn't know what these changes are. Share what you learned. The citizens of Michigan secured 8 voting rights in 2018. Most of those rights were secured through the passage of Proposal 3. Online voter registration was passed by the Michigan legislature and signed into law by then Governor Rick Snyder. Register anytime, early voting by absentee ballot, and straight party voting were all implemented for the local elections beginning May of 2019. So very happy that they brought back straight party voting. It really takes down the amount of time in the polls for the precinct workers on election day. So that was a really big thing, at least from my perspective, that they brought back. Straight party ballot, primary ballot, reintroducing the option to vote straight party was simple because it was removed from the ballot for only one election in November of 2018. We're glad the saga of the straight party ballot is over and the matter is resolved with voters having this option back. Register anytime and early voting, absentee ballot, are two big changes for voting in Michigan. They are changing the way the voters register and vote in this state. These two reforms also change the way elections are administered by every election official in the state. The Secretary of State to your local county, city, or township clerk. It is a challenge. There are more than 1,600 clerks in the state of Michigan. Those are township, city, and county clerks all combined. Michigan has a lot of work to do to ensure citizens and election officials have fully adapted to these new procedures. In a minute, we want to go into some detail about register anytime and early voting by absentee ballot. But first, let's update you on the other voting rights secured in 2018. Let's start with automatic voter registration. Under Proposal 3, any eligible citizen who transacts business at the Secretary of State's office regarding a driver's license or a personal ID card will automatically be registered to vote unless they are ineligible or they decline. Implementing this reform understandably took some time, as it involved changing forms, technology, and practices at all Secretary of State's offices. It also required retraining the employees who work in those branch offices and testing out those new procedures to see how they were going to work. The good news is that automatic voter registration for citizens' interactions with the Secretary of State's office began in all branch offices on September 10th. So if you go into the Secretary of State's office today and you're going to get your driver's license renewed, they're going to ask you whether or not you want to register to vote. The good news is automatic voter registration there are protections to prevent ineligible applicants, for example, people who are non-citizens, from accidentally or intentionally being registered. Those are in place now. One of the most frequently asked questions from individuals is how that happened. So they have all kinds of procedures in place for that. They also now have online voter registration. That was launched late last year. Its implementation also took time. The Secretary of State had to build a new portal for online voter registration, had to be secured against hacking by bad actors, foreign and domestic. If you go online to Michigan.gov /voter registration, residents can register to vote, and current voters can easily change your address at the same website. So if you move, you don't have to go to the Secretary of State's office to change that. You don't have to, and it'll change your voter registration address, and it also will send you a sticker for the back of your driver's license. So you don't have to go to the branch office anymore to change your address. To use this method, visitors must currently have a Michigan driver's license or a personal ID card and qualify to vote in Michigan. So you must be a citizen, you must be over the age of 18, and you must live within the state of Michigan. Online voter registration eliminates the need to track down voters who didn't complete the forms because the electronic system requires completion. Because the applicant already has a driver's license or a personal ID card, an electronic version of the signature eliminates that need. It can be accessed on any computer, tablet, or smartphone. So you don't have to have a computer, you can simply use your phone. The other thing that they did was they implemented election audits. Okay, everyone, when you hear the word audit, you go, no one ever wants to have an audit. What they're doing, Proposal 3 mandated Michigan election audits, which we were already doing prior to Prop 3, but they are different now. The next statewide election and the first full audit will be in 2020 for this new process. The purpose of the audit is to ensure that the results recorded by the tabulating machines, the machines that you put your ballot into, matches the selections made by the voters on their ballot. So last year we had some communities do some risk limiting audits. It was cost effective. They determined relatively simple method of hand counting and statistically significant sample of ballots to ensure the results were properly recorded. The Secretary of State consulted experts from all around the country to determine the best post-election audit for Michigan. And basically what they do is they come in and they say, we want ballots from 4 different precincts, and once the retention period has elapsed, and we can open those ballot bags, and we take those ballots and we simply count all the votes for all the candidates, and we match them up to the tape that printed on them out of the machine on election night, so that we can verify that they match. So it's a little bit time consuming, but it's well worth it to ensure the accuracy of the equipment that we're using. Military ballots, there was a provision requiring military and overseas voters to be sent a ballot within 45 days prior to the election. And that mirrors the federal law. And we have been doing that here in Michigan for a while, but that was also part of Proposal 3. By ensuring this in the Constitution, we've protected against any infringement on the rights in the future. No additional changes are needed to that military ballots at this time. Secret ballots. So Michigan voters also have an affirmative right to a secret ballot as a result of Proposal 3. This has not changed voting practices yet, but it strengthens the secrecy protections for voters in Michigan, especially those with disabilities. Now let's look closely at the two most impactful changes to Michigan voting system: early voting by absentee ballot and register anytime. So, Proposal 3 guaranteed that all registered voters have equal access to an absentee ballot, and the voter's discretion to choose whether to get their absentee ballot in person or by mail. For voters wishing to obtain their absentee ballot in person, they must visit their city or township clerk's office where they are registered to vote. Once they are there, they will complete the application for an absentee ballot and submit it that day. The voter can vote their ballot in the clerk's office, or they can leave with the absentee ballot and return it to the clerk later by mail or by dropping it at the clerk's office. Voters who wish to obtain their absentee ballot by mail, or what some call vote at home, can complete an application which they can obtain online or they can obtain from the clerk's office. The clerk will then mail them the absentee ballot. Then the voter has the choice to either mail it back in or drop it off at the clerk's office. Your clerk may offer you the ability for a dual absentee voter application. This allows you to request an absentee ballot for more than one election. For instance, in the March presidential primary, you will be getting, if you requested an absentee ballot, you'll be getting a dual application. On that application, you could request a ballot for the March election and also the November election. I'm not really sure why the state set it up that way, to be honest with you. To us clerks, it made more sense to do March and August on the dual application, but that's what they chose. So we are still having an election in August, not to worry. So if you happen to get an application that says March and November, just know that if you're on the permanent absentee list, you'll also be getting an application for August. Okay, that wasn't our choice. If we could have changed it, we would have, but unfortunately, we don't get to make all the decisions. Your clerk may, let's see, sorry about that. For instance, the same is true for the August primary and the November general. So if you selected just to get the application or the ballot for March and you didn't check the dual, when you requested again in August, you could select August and November on that dual application, just so you know. But again, we kind of wish they would have set it up so it was March and August. Secretary of State Benson announced last year the state would no longer deprive some newly registered voters of an absentee ballot. There used to be a rule that you must vote in person the first time you vote. So for our college kids, it was very difficult because they would register to vote here at home and then they would go to school someplace else and they wouldn't be home for election day, so they would request an absentee ballot. But if they had never voted in person, they were not eligible. So fortunately for us, Proposal 3 took care of that. It's a great change. So students who are away at college, again, may register to vote either at their home address and follow the usual procedure to request an absentee ballot, or they may register at their college address, which some kids do. And they may decide to vote locally down wherever they are. Michigan requires your voter address and license and state ID address matches. So, they would have to, if they were gonna vote down in, say, East Lansing, their address and their driver's license would have to have that. And then, like I said before, if you register to vote online at a new address, you will receive the change of address sticker to put on the back of your driver's license. Some more changes. The absentee voter ballot envelopes were redesigned last year. The purpose is to reduce or eliminate issues which have resulted in ballots not being counted. This slide will show you the template for the outer envelope, which is mailed to the city township clerk to the voter. It's clearly marked as an absentee voter ballot, and on the back of it, it explains how to return the ballot. and how to track your ballot. One of the two most common reasons the absentee ballot is not counted, that it was not received by 8 p.m. on election day. Please emphasize that voters who wish to mail their ballot should allow several days to do so. Sometimes, it takes 7 days for a piece of mail to get from one side of Midland to the other. Some days it's next day. So just keep that in mind if you're mailing something back, that there is some time fluctuation there. Voters may return their ballot in person. Some municipalities do have drop boxes. I know the city has one. Some of my township clerks I know have drop boxes. So the most important fact to emphasize is the ballot must be received at the clerk's office by 8 p.m. on election day. So at this time, we might want to explain that not everyone may collect and deliver an absentee ballot. A friend offering to drop your absentee ballot off could get themselves in trouble. It is a felony, actually, for anyone to be in possession of an absentee voter ballot except those who are authorized to do so. Only a member of the voter's immediate family or their household who the absent voter has asked may return the ballot. It's very important. People don't often know that. So don't just, hand them out and say, hey, take this down. This slide shows the envelope which must be returned to the city or township clerk's office. Note, it is also clearly marked as an official ballot. If the voter wishes to mail the ballot, first-class postage is required. The most important note to convey about early voting by absentee ballot is to remind absentee voters to sign their envelope. This is so very important because you wouldn't believe how many ballots we actually get back that people forget to sign. And if you don't sign it, we have to find you to get you to sign it in order for us to be able to process it on election day. So there is an arrow, there's a box and an arrow. So make sure that if you are voting absentee, you sign the outside of that envelope. Secrecy sleeves inside the envelope ensure a secret ballot. The second most common reason is that it wasn't received by the clerk's office. Why a ballot may be rejected is it wasn't received by 8 p.m. on election day. So make sure you sign. Very, very important. Make sure you get it back by 8 p.m. the day of the election. Why vote absentee? Because everyone in Michigan may now vote absentee. No excuses needed. You don't have to tell people that you're going to be out of the jurisdiction or anything like that. It makes voting more convenient for busy people who need a sitter, transportation issues, those who simply like a more relaxed voting environment. There's time to reach candidates and to research candidates and issues. Everyone has the right to vote in person, and for many of us it is a joy, but there are many good reasons to avoid the lines and possible challenges of voting in person, and the choice to vote absentee is now available to every single qualified voter. Some clerks maintain a permanent absentee voter list. I would say that almost all of the clerks do that. At least here in Midland County, I can assure you all of them have permanent AV list. Voters who sign up will be automatically mailed an application for every election, not just the ballot itself. You have to still fill out the application, even if you're on the permanent AV list, and then once the clerk receives the application back, then they will mail the ballot to you. Register anytime is an innovation developed here in Michigan. The concept is very simple. An eligible voter who should be able to register to vote at any time. The options for how to register may vary based on how close we are to the next election. But there should always be a method to which eligible voters can register to vote. To be clear, an eligible voter, we mean someone who meets the qualifications to register to vote in Michigan. The person must be a citizen, they must be at least 18 on election day, and they must be a resident of Michigan for at least 30 days by the next election. So even though you don't have to register to vote 30 days, you have to be a resident of the state of Michigan at least 30 days before you can register to vote. So you can't just move here from Texas 1 week and then go vote in our elections. It doesn't work like that. If you meet the criteria, you can register to vote in Michigan, and thanks to Proposal 3, you can register to vote at any time. So through the 15th day prior to the election, eligible people who want to register have options. So an eligible citizen can register to vote by mail by completing a voter registration form and mailing it to their city or township clerk. They can register to vote in person by going to the Secretary of State's office. They can register to vote in person at their county clerk's office. They can register to vote at a designated voter registration agencies. These include offices that provide public benefits and those which provide services to citizens with disabilities. Eligible citizens can register to vote in person at a voter registration drive. These are like mini mail-ins and should be directly diverted to the person conducting the registration drive. So a lot of our colleges have voter registration drives for their students. We do a lot of voter registration drives here in Midland at our high schools for kids who are going to be 18 before the next election. Eligible citizens can register to vote online through the 15th day before the election. Beginning on the 14th day before Election Day and through 8 p.m. on Election Day. Would-be voters have only one option. To register to vote during this period of time, eligible citizens must appear at their city or township clerk's office and provide proof of residency. So proof of residency would be a Michigan driver's license or a personal ID with that address on it. They can also use a current utility bill, a bank statement, or any government document with the voter's name and address on it. The address must be in the city or township where the voter wishes to register to vote. And they can do this up to 8 p.m. on Election Day in the clerk's office, in the city or township where they're wanting to register. Register Anytime was already implemented in the 2019 election. This was an exceedingly low turnout, yet more than 1,000 voters registered within 14 days of the election. Of these, the vast majority were registering to vote for the first time in the state of Michigan. As you would expect, many new registrations were from younger voters. More than half were ages 18 to 25. Several voters over the age of 70 registered for the first time. So that's kind of some neat trivia. When similar reforms have been adopted in other states, the research has shown that overall voter turnout has increased by 5%. Using 2016 turnout figures, that would mean an increase of 200,000 additional voters in November of 2020. Many citizens aren't sure if they are registered to vote. You can always go to michigan.gov/vote or call your clerk's office to find out whether or not you are registered to vote. Here's what it looks like when you put in no reason absentee voting and register anytime together early voting. Beginning 45 days before the election and through 8 p.m. on Election Day, an eligible citizen can register to vote and cast an absentee ballot in one visit to their city or township clerk's office. So I could go into my township clerk's office today, I could register to vote, I could get an absentee ballot, fill it out, and I'm done. My ballot will be counted on Election Day. City or township clerk's office must be open at least 8 hours the weekend before Election Day. Check with your local clerk for hours. On Election Day only, voters needing to register or update their registration address can register and vote in their city or township clerk's office until 8 p.m. Voters who are already registered to vote where they live must go vote at their assigned polling location. So you cannot get an absentee ballot on Election Day. Let's see. How many of you already know how to use vote411.org? The online voting guide, the League of Women Voters in Michigan and local leagues across our state provide this outstanding educational resource to help inform voters about what's on the ballot, with a nonpartisan voting guide to the candidates and issues, as well as links to find out where your polling place is and more. Simply go online to vote411.org, enter your address, and only your races will show up. The League of Women Voters never supports or opposes any candidate, but invites all candidates whose names will be on the ballot to participate, including minor party candidates if there are any. We want voters to be informed about all their choices so that they can vote for the candidates whose views most closely align with their own. So Proposal 3, implementations and challenges. In Michigan, city and township clerks have responsibility for administering elections. That means the fate of Proposal 3 lies in the hands of more than 1,600 city and township clerks across the state. There are challenges. There will be challenges on Election Day, I can assure you. We are trying to prepare for them ahead of time. We've got lots of training going on to help with that. The Secretary of State creates policies and practices and technology, but does not administer elections at the local level. It's your city and township clerk who run the elections in your community. Your city and township clerks decide how many poll workers they need to hire, how many polling sites and voting equipment at each poll, how much internal and external education and voter registration to do in your community, and whether to offer evening and or weekend hours for citizens to register to vote. Implementing these new voting laws impacts all 1,600 plus clerks. Higher turnouts, more absentee voting, new registrations in the last week or 2 weeks before the election. Same-day voter registration require many adjustments to our traditional practices. At the same time, many clerks face budget and staff cuts. We expect a record turnout in 2020. We expect record turnout for absentees in 2020. We need the election system to run smoothly. The ACLU of Michigan has been spearheading the project for clerk engagement to enable partnering organizations, the League of Women Voters in Michigan, Voters Not Politicians, and Campus Votes, to offer assistance to their local clerks, helping to recruit poll workers, absentee ballot election workers, education voters. So if anyone you know would like to be an election inspector, we would welcome you. Come to the city clerk's office and fill out an application. We'd love to have you. There are a variety of ways that might be welcomed. If you'd like to be involved, please contact the League of Women Voters for more information. The implementation of Proposal 3 will not be fully completed until our communities are aware of the changes and the clerks have had time and resources to fully implement them. The Secretary of State's office is committed to doing it as well and seamlessly as possible. To that end, various coalitions of organizations have been working with the Secretary of State's office to educate and be educated about the changes. The implications of the changes and the challenges which remain. We hope you will be alert for more modifications and announcements. We'll do our best to help keep you informed. And there's some current resources up there on the screen for you. And now we are at the question time.
And you mentioned the Secretary of State. You mentioned the Secretary of State's office, but is that only if you're doing driver's license, not license plates?
To when you want to change your address?
Register or change address?
It's only when you're doing something with your driver's license, but you can register to vote there at any point in time. Even if you went there to get a new plate for your car, you could simply ask to register to vote, yes.
But it's only automatic with driver's
That
license?
is correct. Or a personal ID card. And then you're automatically registered unless you decline.
Hi. How is your office geared up for the additional absentee ballots? Did y'all get new?
Careful. Closer to your mouth.
I didn't think I could hear myself. Hello?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, I will speak louder. How is your particular office geared up for the influx of the additional absentee ballots? Do you have new equipment? I know you're probably not hiring more people, but you have new equipment.
Well, we're always trying to hire more people to make the process smoother. But we are doing some things. So the City of Midland, because last year, let's see, in 2016, they had over 12,000 absentee ballots, just the city. And that was people taking the ballots out to the precincts and processing them throughout the day, with the election workers still trying to manage all the people coming into the polls to vote. So we know we're going to have a huge number of absentee ballots that are going to come back. So the City of Midland went out and purchased a high-speed tabulator that they will be using, and they will have an absentee counting board that will just focus on processing absentees. I do have one of my other townships that's also running an absentee counting board, and dependent upon the legislation, because there is some legislation out there that may allow to have a central count absentee counting area. If that were to happen, then we would have something at the county where we would hire 3 or 4 teams of people, and we would count all the absentees in one location. But right now, we'll see how it goes with the city and the one township, and then if that legislation doesn't pass, I would foresee other townships putting in absent voter counting boards to just process absentees on election day.
And having worked in the cold last year, a 16-hour day is a long, long time.
It is a very long day.
And you're looking for more poll workers. What can be done about shortening the time, dividing up schedules? What's in the works for that, or is it in the works?
Well, as some of you may know, we do have a new city clerk. Her name is Erica Armstrong, and she is new to Midland, but she does have some great ideas about maybe some split shifts. So I look forward to that in the future. I don't know the answer today, whether or not she's going to offer that, but we have had conversation about it. So there are some townships that do offer split days now, but the cities where we really need election workers.
You mentioned several examples of clerk engagement. Could you please repeat that? You said an election inspector. What are some of the others?
For individuals to become engaged in...
Correct.
Okay. So election inspector is the big one, obviously. That's the one that we're talking about. But certainly, I mean, the clerks are always looking for people to volunteer to set up the night before, you know, be a runner for them. You know, they can deputize people to handle certain things for them on election day or other times. So yeah, engaging, going to their meetings, you know, finding out what they need. Certainly all those things are beneficial.
So you're saying to contact the city clerk and simply ask, what do you need?
The city clerk or or if you live in one of the townships, certainly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll add, what is an inspector, election inspector? What would be the duties of an election inspector?
So Jane is chuckling. She's here in the front row. She has been one of my election inspectors since I started, I believe, in the county, which we won't talk about how long ago that was. But the duties range from being a greeter when the voter comes in, to running a computer, to handing out a ballot, to verifying the information before the voter puts the ballot into the tabulator, and everything in between. It's a very long day, and we always make sure that we try to put you with someone who has been an inspector before, so you don't feel like you're lost.
This isn't a question, but I just want to tell you that Vote 411 will be available on for the presidential primary candidates. So it's state by state, and I'm not sure exactly when it's going to come out for Michigan. It should be the primary is March 10th.
That is correct.
March 10th. So anyway, you'll watch for a notice somewhere, maybe in the newspaper or on Facebook, that just go into vote411.org, and it's an online voter guide, and each of the candidates will have been, and I think they all responded actually, will have responded to some questions and some information on them.
Actually, I went on the last night, and the Democrat candidates have already responded, and there's photographs of them.
Okay. Oh, really? So that's up.
Right.
Oh, good.
Right.
Thank you, Terry.
And one of the most heartbreaking things as an election inspector is to have a student, primarily college student, show up to vote. And, the addresses aren't the same. He's registered. He has one address on his license, and he's registered someplace else. So what can be done to help alleviate this, or what is being done?
Well, at that point in time, he could choose. So say his driver's license says that he lives in East Lansing, but he's here to vote. So what could be done is he could come to the city clerk's office and he could register to vote here in Midland, and he could either vote an absentee ballot right then with the city clerk, excuse me, right there with the city clerk, or the city clerk can print off a document that he would then take to the polls, to the election inspector, and show it to them, and then that documentation would tell the election inspector what type of ballot that individual is to receive, whether it be just a regular ballot or a challenge ballot. And we're going to actually go over that in our election inspector training coming up in February, or later this month.
That was just very distressing to an election inspector to deny somebody the opportunity to vote.
I absolutely agree.
I just want to say some good things about being an election inspector for anybody who's watching or is here. It's a wonderful day. It is long, but it's very interesting. It's a lot of fun. The people you work with are fun. It's so great to have someone, a young man or young woman, coming up and voting for the first time. That is so cool. And in 2016, I had a man who hadn't voted since Truman, he said. So it's just a really cool thing, and it's a great way to give back to your community. And if you are lucky enough to do it in your own precinct, you get to see all your neighbors, too.
There you go.
I just received an email from a friend out in Larkin Township. She's asking, there are two different prices being shown in the absentee ballots. The city is showing a 70-cent postage, and out Larkin Township, they are asking for a 55-cent postage returning ballot. Could you ask Ann about this?
I would recommend the 70 cents, but you certainly could take your ballot to the post office and they will tell you exactly. Lydia, maybe you know. Lydia is one of my township clerks.
I just mailed some the other day, and I took one in and had it weighed, and it took the 2-ounce stamp, so it would be the 70 or 72, whatever that current rate is right now. That was for both envelopes, the ballot, the secrecy sleeve, and the voting instructions.
Yeah, I would go with the 70-cent one, but you could always take it to the postmaster and have it checked.
Have there been any changes or improvements in guaranteeing secret ballot?
Guaranteeing secret ballots or guaranteeing secret absentee ballots? I'm not sure what. Can you be a little more specific?
One of the points was secret ballot guaranteed, so I was just wondering if there was actually any changes or improvements in what previous elections had already maintained.
I think that's referring to the absentee ballots, and I think it's just more. We have updated secrecy sleeves that are better fitted for the ballot itself. We only have one size ballot now instead of those big gigantic ones. So I think that it's just the secrecy sleeves fitting better so that when they're being processed, the stub can be easily taken off without the ballot itself being exposed. So those would be the updates that I'm aware of.
This is a question primarily for the upcoming March 10th election. Are we going to have one ballot?
Two ballots. So when you go into the polls on election day, you will have to request either a Republican ballot or a Democratic ballot, okay? And you'll have to make that selection, and that's the ballot you'll be given. Now, if you live out into some of the townships, you have a possibility of 3 ballots, because you could have a Republican ballot, a Democratic ballot, or just a proposal ballot. So some people who don't want to vote for either don't want to request a Republican or Democratic ballot, and they have a proposal, could simply request just the proposal ballot. So yes, you will have people who are not happy with having to disclose that information, but that is the way Michigan election law is required for our presidential primary, is you must select a party.
I don't really have a question, but I want to know if there are any other questions that anybody has. And if not, I just want to give you a little plug that we have another town hall on March 13th at the Senior Center at the noon hour. And the topic will be on the redistricting commission and what's the update with that. So, Anne, thank you so very much for everything, and we very much appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.